Okay. We're good? All right. Welcome to our OWASP talk. It's our second of the year, I think. We meet 4 times in a year or thereabouts, and we try. So OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP. It is a nonprofit foundation that works with improved security software through community-led open source software projects, hundreds of local chapters. Yeah, so donate, join, or be a corporate member. That'd be great. We're the, next slide, we're the Oakland County chapter. We meet here at, in Southfield at the, sorry, I'm reading my notes and that's really tiny, my screen. We have 2 chapter leaders. It's me and Stephen Legg, and we meet at the Town Square Food and Spirits. We kind of just co-opt the MySec meeting space. So next slide. Let's get on to the talk. Fantastic web exploits and where to find them. Or AKA just like the OWASP top 10. We're just going to go deep dive on that. So who am I? I do DevSecOps. I work in InfoSec and cybersecurity. It's in the Beltway. I can use the word cyber. It works for me. As I said, I was the OWASP co-chapter leader. That is hard to say. Yes, I'm one of them. A long-term developer. I write a bunch of languages. I hack on a bunch of them. I do a bunch of stuff. So trust me, sort of. I kind of know what I'm doing, sort of, but not awesome. Heckling? And a strong dislike of bullet points. Unfortunately, this slide deck is going to be full of text. It's going to be awful because it's a complicated subject. Next slide. So, whoa, go back. So this is the URL, and it just, you're going to go in there, and it's just going to be link after link after link. This is basically what we're talking about. Next slide. What I'll be showing you is tip of the iceberg. It is far from complete, so be patient. I'm trying to do what I can on a very complicated subject. Next slide. So a lot has changed since 2017. I think that was maybe the last time I gave an OWASP top 10 was around that time. And next slide. Yeah, it looks really complicated. A lot of new stuff. A lot of arrows. Next. So the game's changed, right? Next. Not really. And like I said, this is complicated. And things haven't changed because now they're trying to reorganize a bunch of interrelated disciplines and vulnerabilities and complexities. And information security is hard. Web security is hard. Everything is just so interrelated. There isn't 100% way we're going to group it all together. We're just trying to do it the best we can to keep things coherent. Next. So enough pretext, enough talking about it. Let's get into it. Broken access control. I'm not going to read the bottom stuff. You guys can read that. Next. So I know what you're all thinking. Oh, next. It's got to be the people. It's always the people. That's the passwords, and they're stupid passwords that suck. They don't know how to do anything, and they don't know how to do multi-factor. Next. It's the people. Next. This is getting really tiresome saying next. But it's really code. This subject matter just really covers bad logic, bad coding project. We'll get into the passwords that's later on. So next. So like I said, we're all really bad at this. If you notice, that's Facebook. They're huge, right? They should know how to do all this stuff correctly. And we have, so I don't have a laser pointer. So we're going to look at this and you think, okay, what's the major problem here? You would think, oh, wait, I can choose my role as manager. And actually this, next, it's right here. Someone actually started playing around with it, started taking out parameters and messing around with it as bug hunters would do. And you realize there's no error when they take this out. Other ones, they have an error. So when they take this out, they end up getting some unusual behavior where they can start just messing around with other people's access of their little groups and such. So basically, before digging, not really digging into it too much, basically you can take over someone's account, their little group accounts. So this is a problem of where, someone has access they shouldn't have. So next. Another one I think we've heard of recently. That other one was a while back, but this one is recent. The FBI email issue. I don't know if anyone's ever read that or saw that. That was also an access issue. So yeah, late in the evening, around 12 Eastern, tens of thousands of emails getting flooded out from the FBI address and warning about fake cyber attacks. So yeah, so we're dealing with some broken access of our own here, where I'm trying to read stuff here. So we're all familiar with this little snafu. So next. Basically, what comes down to is the request of the confirmation code. It was generated client-side, and you can send, basically on the client side, they had access to the post materials that basically would go and get sent out in the email. So they could actually modify who is it coming from, where is it supposed to go to, and what's the message, and what's the subject matter. And that's all on the client side. They just, here's this encapsulated email that's going to go out, modify it, and they could just send it out. Nobody should be able to do that. You shouldn't trust the client side. Next. Supervision and Detection. Next. Least privilege and deny by default. We should all know these principles. Don't just willy-nilly just open it up. But a lot of times things are open by default just for accessibility, so you got to lock them down. Next. Never trust the user side. Never trust the users. Never trust any of the parameters. Never trust that crap at all. Always try to look at the data that they're sending you, look for weird stuff or anything, basically air out. And whenever it comes to the point, just try, it's better to fail than allow someone to have access to something they shouldn't. You can always open it up later in a nice meeting or discussion. Next. Don't forget the API. It's also a web page. Tightly control access to that. Controls like post, we're getting too fast. Post, put, delete, lock them down. Next. Generate meaningful log errors. Not just for the user. For the security team, the SOC team, whoever's looking at the logs, make it useful. Otherwise, they have no idea if you just put it in a hex code and it means nobody. It shouldn't just be for the developers. And try to write stuff to fail. Like I said, it's better to fail than it is to give up access and controls. Next. Cryptographic failures. So next. I'm not reading the bottom parts of any of this stuff. I'm trying to burn through as quick as I can. So we've probably all heard AWS S3 bucket issues. There's thousands of them. I've lost count by now, and just nobody knows how to lock it down. Not only just giving them public access, but cryptographically, they do not encrypt it. So if someone gets some back access control through some web app, and they get access to an S3 bucket, and none of it's encrypted. And why? It's like minor configuration changes. Next. Capital One. This one is a bit of a stretch, but it's pretty sure PI and PSSI is stored at rest. That should be encrypted, right? This stuff shouldn't just be plain text, or at least make it complicated and difficult for someone to get into that and audit it. It should not be something easily just accessible through a web page. Next. Prevention and detection. Next. Don't store sensitive data if you don't have to. Easy. If you don't have to store it, delete it, get rid of it. You don't have to worry about encrypting it or all that overhead or all that storage. Get in the policy of trying to get rid of that. It just limits your liability. And if you have to, encrypt it. Always encrypt data in transfer and in store, and when it's static or dynamic. And monitor and audit the process. We could have totally prevented capital one if someone is actually monitoring someone actively and controlling their type of access, that elevated access to that sensitive information. Next. Securely configure all your applications. You should be using TLS 1.2. I can't think of a reason for on the open net you should be using anything other than that. There are cases where you have inside legacy stuff, yes, but that should be completely isolated. There should be nothing of that touching the net. And it goes along with that. There's also 1.3, but I think that's still kind of on the ropes, not 100% on that one. Make sure you're using perfect for secrecy, ciphers, and cipher prioritization of the server. Secure parameters, OCSP stapling, and HSTS. If you have, okay, that's a lot. You go to this URL. This will help you actually configure. Next. Basically, this is what the URL looks like. You can go through a bunch of different your server configurations you want to do. Always go with immediate. I don't know why anyone goes with the old, modern. I don't know exactly how many people really need to go with modern, but at least intermediate. This makes it easy. This makes your server configuration that simple. You don't have to think, oh, hey, which cipher should be first and how it should prioritize. It just makes it dead simple for you. You don't have to try to figure it all out. Next. Got to store passwords using strong, adaptive, and salt hashing. We should all just use bcrypt. Don't try to roll your own crypto. Don't. You're not PhD. You can't do it. So don't. And salt. 100% salt. It's the easiest thing in the world. Just add a salt to it. It just makes cracking hashes so much harder. The fact that they probably don't even try to do it because they'll just be trying to match the hashes with passwords they have. They'll never match. So next, injection. Hey, one we all know. We're all very familiar with this one. Next. Unfortunately, it covers everything. It just seems to be more and more stuff they seem to be jamming into this. And we have names and terminologies for all the cross-site scripting, SQL injection, LDAP injection. I'm sure we're all very familiar with that one that happened in December with Log4j. That was not fun. XML injection seems to be kind of a little bit on the backslide. We have XPath, we have local file inclusion, we have remote file inclusion. I don't even remember what CRLF injection is. We have email header injection, HTTP injection, which comes to parameter injection in the HTTP header. So next. So let's just keep it simple. We know and love this one. The old 1 equals 1. We all should know this pretty well. If you don't, this is a major problem. Next. Basically, if you know SQL, you'll know this pretty much just solves true, and it just dumps everything from accounts. Next. So here's a cross-site scripting example we have. As you can see in the get parameter name, you can actually jam JavaScript into it. That's pretty much what the quintessential cross-site scripting attack is. If you know anything about JavaScript, this box is an alert box, and it's displaying 1, 2, 3. This looks innocuous until someone can actually start taking some stuff from another site and doing malicious JavaScript. It's a very big problem. It's very tricky to find some of these things. It's not as simple as just a get parameter, but it's a start when you start looking at this. Don't trust these things. Don't allow any of this kind of script stuff to occur. Next. Yeah, so prevention and detection. Use an ORM. It's not 100%, but it's a great start. Scrutinize input on the server side. Set up a WAF. Again, not 100%, and that is a problem all in itself. See previous talks I've given. Monitor logs for SQL or input processing errors. It's a loud, noisy process. Usually it's basically guess and check when you have someone detect a SQL injection, it's kind of just by accident, and they're going to generate a lot of errors. So monitor your logs. And yeah, don't trust user submitted data. Scrutinize the hell out of it. Try to cut it off right then and there. If it's not what you're expected, error, fail. Don't give them the page. Next. Insecure design. Next. Yeah, I don't like this category. Yeah, this seems a bit of a catch-all. Next. But all we try to do is we step back from it and we say it's less of a technical problem and more of an approach to how you're actually developing your application as a whole. So it seems to cover kind of everything, and again, I don't really like this topic. Next. So the best things I could try to pull from this are trust boundary violations, basically mixing secure and unsecure data in the same data stream. That can happen on the memory side of it, or it can happen in caching. It can happen a couple different places. Just do your best job to try to isolate those environments if you have such a thing. Basically, authenticated and non-authenticated data should not be commingling. Error codes should not be what we see as developers. It should not be this massive stack trace. You don't put that on a web page. That's for the logs. So if you're writing PHP, which I know it likes to just spit out a bunch of stuff onto the page, try your best to write a code to capture that error and submit it to the log. Rate limiting, try to assume automation and bots will always attempt to manipulate your app, because they do, because they're always there. They're always scanning the net. They're always looking for little areas where they can grab on hold. So assume the worst. And yeah, like I said, don't store sensitive data in a cache or any type of temporary storage that may be accessible to the user. Next. Security misconfiguration. Next. So just to borrow from the last one, it basically goes down back to the technical level. It's all about common misconfigurations or just leaving on default settings in the server. So next. Prevention and detection. Because it's numerous how many different ways we could see a server could be misconfigured, and it just seems obvious. We don't really need great examples of that. So remove unnecessary apps and configurations like Tomcat Manager. Don't show directory indexes. Don't rely on any form of obscurity. Definitely remove any default creds, or definitely don't put any hard-coded creds. I know if we want an example, we can see that there's a certain state that had put hard-coded stuff into HTML and thought that was, this is okay. Nobody can read this. It's in the mysterious code. Just press F12 and oh God, you're a hacker. So yeah, definitely don't hard-code. Again, don't present anything to the user. Don't put anything in user space that isn't what they should be seeing with their level of access. Definitely nothing revealing of any of the secret natures of how your system works. Basic server hardening, firewalls, put encryption on. Don't be doing any plain text stuff. Just get certs, guys. It's not that hard. Don't store sensitive data in cookies, HTML, scripts, CSS, just what have you. Again, anything in user space, don't give to users unless they're supposed to have that level of access. Next. Vulnerable and outdated components. Yes, patch your shit, guys. It's just that easy. We hate this part of it. Updating stuff, it's difficult. It just kind of gets more to the heart of more central security stuff. Next. So, again, this is, do we really need an example? I can point to struts. I can push to like a bunch of e-commerce stuff. Just every week, it's just more and more of the worst stuff we've seen. So, you see the CVs, you see the 0 days, you see the vulnerabilities, just patch it. So next. And, we are all familiar with just how tenuous everything is. We have libraries dependent on libraries, dependent on libraries, dependent on libraries, and it's just this massive problem. But you just need to, To borrow something from Mike's previous talk, he put a quote in it, so I'm going to just jam a quote into it from Towne, anticipate difficulty by managing the easy. So you're going to have to do this. It's expected. You're going to have to patch. So next. Remove unused, unmanaged dependencies. Lower the amount of work you have to do. Why are you patching something, or why are you updating something you don't even use? Get rid of it. Keep dependencies up to date. So try to put that on some kind of scheduled maintenance. It doesn't have to be every day, but definitely on the 0 days, you probably want to patch those as soon as you can. So anticipate that. Build that into your process. Get management to be okay with it. Make sure you get like a day off or 2 if you're going to be up all night and fix that.
What if you get work and people don't patch stuff? Your business is done.
That's a management problem. I'm just talking on a technical level. So this is a thing, this is a bit of a management problem. Yeah, what?
How would you apply the whole shift left paradigm to this situation here?
I don't know, and if we look at RSA right now, there's some places that are saying you need to shift right. I'm not sure. I think what it is, we have to start kind of thinking beyond just shift left. That is a paradigm. But it is something that we shouldn't even, before we even move forward, we should have things in place. And unfortunately, we get into the next couple of, I don't know if it's the next one or soon, we'll end up talking about something similar to that. Basically, you need to have your SDLC and your CI/CD, all that needs to be done. And if you don't, it breaks down, things fall apart. You need management to be on board with this stuff. And just saying, oh, we'll shift left is a nice platitude, but it never seems to happen if all they're doing is saying that. They need to be behind it. They need to put policy. They need to put procedure into it, and be 100% behind it. Next. Identification and authentication failures. Next. Now it's about passwords. Now we can go and beat on the user, but also it's a code problem because you're allowing the user to do this stupid behavior. So it gets to something we all know, we love, better passwords, do rate limiting, don't prevent the same IP or the same range of users of actually being used again and again and again. MFA, you should all have MFA, but we get a little bit more into it. It's more than just, hey, just turn on MFA. You actually need to enforce it. If we've seen previous talks, major problems of just, oh, we have MFA, but we don't enforce it. Having it on is not enough. You have to enforce it. Everyone has to use it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Why have it if people can kind of choose to opt out of it? Weak account recovery, where the old days we'd use security questions, but a lot of those are easily looked up, and people who are close to them, or people can be social engineered to get that kind of information. We shouldn't rely upon that. Yeah, and even we have misconfigured single sign-on. We think this is our saving grace, except the IT probably doesn't know how to apply it. It's complicated. Like I said, security is complicated. Next, we'll get further into it. So yeah, passwords. We know your passwords suck. Enforce better ones. Next. So go into prevention and detection. So yeah, identity is hard. I know this. It's near to my heart. I work in identity. It's rough. I've seen companies try to fix identity in a number of ways, and it's just such a complicated problem. So I brought up before, password and account recovery. You should never expose passwords. We should really kind of go to the how we normally deal with authentication in the first place. You should always have something they know, a password, something they have, some kind of MFA, token, a phone, YubiKey, what have you, something they are, biometrics. Do that on any way you need to authenticate them. So sure, they forgot their password. Okay, what is something else that they have, something else they are? Have an additional way of confirming who they are. So yeah, maybe sending an email, and then they have to click on a link in the email, and then you have to do an MFA on that. You know, we can't just entirely rely upon passwords, and if, oh, we'll just let all our security guards down because they forgot their password. Streamlining line onboarding and offboarding. Again, this is an identity problem. Major thing of offboarding. Get rid of dead accounts. Someone in your company, or you have a problem customer or partner or what have you, as soon as you basically have said, okay, we're done with them, cut access, kill them. You can have that discussion with a lawyer or what have you afterwards. If it's contract breach, better to be safe than sorry. Turn off the access as soon as it's, that person's a problem. You can always turn it back on and just say, oh, it's a technical problem. Audit accounts and their permissions. Again, an identity problem. We always seem to have this case, definitely internally, but sometimes you see this with customers or partners. They just get more and more access, and you never seem to trim it back. They always get additional access to the point where they basically are pretty much an administrator, and they're not. So you have to start trimming back and start moving them away from their access to start to pivot into different roles or different roles. Yes?
I need this access to do my job.
Okay. All of this access? I highly doubt that. Every time they do it, I think every time you do a different role. But you're an administrator, so that's the
number one comment.
you already have full access.
That's the number one common thing I hear. I saw this pretty dashboard on a team call, and I need this dashboard to do my job. I can't do my job without this access.
All right, I need your manager to approve that. They'll accept that risk. That way, there's a problem. It's that guy. That guy said it was okay for that person to have all this access. And they're not under the same manager. As you go to a different manager, that manager they were previously under, hey, do they still need access to that project? Maybe for the next couple weeks as they start to kind of share off responsibilities, but not indefinitely. When's the deadline? When can I cut that off?
See, New Yorker just had a good article about a guy at CA who got fired for that, for the Vault 7 stuff. Same thing, he got access to his old project, and then it was taken away again, and that's ultimately what caused him to leave.
I'm impressed you read the New Yorker. You're like 5 people who read the New Yorker. A lot of people have subscriptions. Don't read it. Next. Don't rush your single sign-on multi-factor integration. A lot of times, it's a new piece of software. You don't know how to work with it. I work with it, and there's a lot of weird, conflicting terminologies on it, where strict doesn't mean what you necessarily think it means, and it seems to just kind of break everything, and nothing seems to work. It depends on your product. I won't name and shame names on this one, but there are some of them that just, the UI is just awful. In single sign-on integration, a lot of companies seem to think, oh, it's just configuration changes, and we just, it'll go back and forth, except, the person who is the identity provider probably knows their shit. The person who's the service provider has no idea what any of this stuff is. They have no idea. They're like, oh, I'll just follow the instructions. Yeah, except those instructions are no longer valid because we're now 5 versions different, and no one's keeping up with the documentation. It's hard. Don't plan it for like a week and, hey, this is going to work. I mean, maybe if you have an integrator who is seasoned in the stuff and knows how it works, you're gonna, you might think you can get away with that, but still, you can't. You have a lot of applications. None of them are gonna slide in the same way. They're all gonna be. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be a big project. It's gonna be a month or two. So yeah, if you don't know how to do it, don't really try. I would say it's going to work sort of, and you're like, oh, it's great. Yeah, we don't have to worry about it. And that's how you end up with major security problems where it's broken authentication and, oh, hey, yeah, I can use another person's multi-factor authentication token and log in as that person because I know that person's cred, so I can use my multi-factor token, but sign in as that person. And your shit, it just doesn't. I've seen so many misconfigurations of it where it allows people to get access to stuff they're not supposed to. Yeah, mandate security controls. That's kind of an internal process of what it is, what level of security you need. Regularly test enforcement. So you need to test that. Like I just said, try using someone else's token when you're signing in as yourself. And if you're able to use their token, okay, this isn't working as expected. Or can I opt out of it, just not use the token? Is there some way for me to get around this kind of thing? Definitely, if you're the administrator and you've put it in place, you may have read or may have seen a couple different ways you might be able to get in. Don't use local accounts. If you're going single sign-on, local accounts are a way for you to bypass all those controls, all those policies, all those controls you've put into your tool that you're integrating that handles that identity. So like I said, if you don't know how to integrate this product, it's not time to learn by doing. It's not like, hey, we'll throw it together and maybe it'll work. It's your authentication. It's your primary means of defense. If you're just going to leave the gate down and be like, we'll fix it later. Yeah, we're sort of kind of working on it. Don't do that. Hire a professional or even get a consultant to say, hey, this is too big of a project for just your IT staff. Next. Software and data integrity failures. So I brought this up before. Yeah, we're all familiar with a CI/CD pipeline, right? Except, next, it kind of just, you have problems with the tests and things don't quite work, and you end up building it and just deploying it. And we'll fix it later. We'll fix it in tests. We'll fix it in prod. We'll carve out some time. It never happens. Or that doesn't work, and you have now stuff that doesn't quite come together. It works, but it doesn't apply the security controls because security controls somehow broke your code. There's a reason why this is in a series process. If something does not work, you should not just try to bypass it and get around it. Sit there and analyze it. Why is it breaking? Why is it not working? I don't care if you ran out of time. Pushing out insecure stuff is way worse than whatever thing you get hand slapped or dinged on. Your manager may think otherwise, but it's better than getting fired, right? Next. So yeah, it basically quickly turns into a fix, deploy, fix, deploy, fix, deploy cycle, and you never get back to the CI/CD pipeline. Everything gets scrapped. You're just in this constant cycle of trying to fix stuff that's in prod. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You never go backwards. So, next.
We call this a cycle of red.
Oh, and then there's the software development lifecycle. Except, oh wow, that arrow shouldn't have appeared first. Animations are hard. Just press next, I guess, a couple times. So yeah, the implementation, back. Well, too much. So this arrow is supposed to be last, but so the implementation breaks. But you just keep going back and forth, just being a jerk. This is why I want control over it. So your implementation, as I said before, the implementation doesn't work. It starts to show cracks, doesn't work. Security controls don't work. And testing, they keep kicking back. QA keeps going like, this isn't working, nothing's working. Okay, so we're just going to bypass testing. We'll just push it to the prod. We've got 2 weeks, and this thing's got to be working. We've got to show a demo. And maintenance, what's maintenance, man? We're still in that cycle of, oh my God, it's not working quite right. And it's, security controls, we'll try to sort of get them in. And you just end up in this software development lifecycle. the cycle just is constantly planning, analysis, dying, compile or deploy, and then right back to, okay, what did we do wrong? Next. So, yeah, major problems with this: failure to meet agreed upon standards and procedures, security controls. It's not integrating security into design or bypassing it entirely because we just don't have time for that. The security things we put in place, break it. And relying on tools outside code that isn't audited or well understood. It's doing just, hey, this library makes it work. This is a problem. If you don't understand what it's doing, it's probably not doing what you want it to do in the most secure way.
Approve it anyways, right?
Pardon?
Approve it.
Yeah, oh, of course, approve. I accept this risk. I'm not sure what it does, but I accept this risk.
Given the recent breaches and several times Node.js is poisoned with a malicious package, how important is creating an SBOM and maintaining an SBOM? Can you touch on what an SBOM is for everyone else?
So an SBOM is basically the entirety of all of your code. What does it rely upon? So all the dependencies and all their dependencies and all the libraries and everything that's in there, and just getting an entire list. It's basically equivalent to getting all the assets on your network. This is all the assets that your code depends upon. And what was your question? That because that's SBOM. That's basically your. I forget what the entire acronym is because there's so many acronyms I'm trying to remember. Yes, thank you. And it lists out everything. So hypothetically, the idea is you're supposed to be able to go through that and audit it and make sure that each of these things is up to date and each of these things is a thing you actually need. Just like asset management, go through it. Hey, is this even on our network anymore? Is this thing being patched? Is this thing up to date? And supposedly it should help you, at least your team, get an idea of where you sit. And was there a question beside that?
I was relating it to the current.
Oh, how important it is?
How important it is, but also in the event, well, not in the event, several times it's been found that someone uploaded a malicious package, like JS parser was one recently, Node.js, and a lot of organizations still struggle with the CIS top 10 and basic asset inventory.
Whose talk is this? I can step down. I can go have a couple sips of water. But yeah, I would say the SBOM is just as critical as asset management as it is in your corporate environment. You can't fix if you don't know what it is. You can't manage it if you don't know where it exists. If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. So it needs to be done. You need to have an understanding of what you're dealing with. Next. Prevention and detection. I would say first and foremost, keep your CI/CD pipeline up. Your Jenkins box, your GitLab. Don't post stuff to GitHub unless it's like a private repo, and even then you need to tightly control that. Who can post to that? Just these are your most sensitive areas. You don't have your manufacturing out in the open and just, hey, come see what our PI, our intellectual property, and how we build stuff. You don't do that in the open. Don't have your code out there in the open unless you're an open source company. But I mean, even still, publish your done source, not how the sausage is made. Protect your development process. Like I just said, don't put any of your pipeline online. Don't expose it. Lock it down. Treat it like the critical server that it's actually getting deployed to, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if your dev servers are vulnerable and have problems, well, your prod servers get to be in a sorry state because it's got malicious code now on it. Protect devs from themselves. They should probably have the most amount of scrutiny to them. I know they're going to complain, oh, I need this tool. Okay, audit that tool. Make sure it's important. Well, one, that they actually need it. Two, that it actually isn't malicious. Just run it through any type of code analysis you would normally run anything through. And try and get an understanding where this came from. And yeah, and talk to them about their SBOMs if you're in a high security environment. But yeah, they shouldn't be able to download malicious stuff. Don't torrent stuff. This is basic corporate security stuff. Scrutinize them even more because they have access to your code. And we've seen it a couple times where devs get hacked or they'll pull down malicious code that they'll use to compile their code for some strange reason. I don't know why someone downloads stuff from torrents and like, yeah, I'll use this in my corporate environment. Dev environment should be totally isolated, no internet in or out. There's no reason for your dev environment to have that. And if someone inside your company from another, just use a VPN or other secure channels. It does not need to be on the internet. Implement static analysis tooling, linters and whatnot. There's a ton of software out there that'll help you get there. Next, security logging and monitoring. See me talk about logging several times. We're going to dig into it. Next. This is what happens. You don't manage your logs. It becomes a total nightmare. Next. So yeah, this is masochism. If this is how you manage your logs, you don't manage your logs. Nobody looks at these things. This is awful. I hate looking at Windows Event Viewer. I can't get through stuff. It's like something I should be able to do in an hour takes me weeks to get through. It's slow, it's buggy, it's awful, I hate it. Next. So yeah, this is basically what logs, people kind of treat them as, oh, let's just get another camera on there. Let's get another camera on there. No one can look at all this stuff. No one has compound eyes. Nobody can assess all this information all at once. So don't just leave it on the server. You need to consolidate it. You need a log management tool. Next. So next. What is actual monitoring? Not just, hey, we made a log or we're writing errors to the log. Great. Someone actually has to look at it. Except humans aren't going to be looking at those logs, as I said. You need something to automate that process to look for aberrant behavior or things outside the norm or things that you would consider outside of one standard deviation of typical behavior. Like Mike logging in at 4 in the morning into this web app and accessing some information. He shouldn't be doing that, and there's no good reason for him to be doing that. Alert, send an alert. Or, hey, we're seeing a bunch of SQL errors. Send an alert. So there's a bunch of different software out there that could possibly do it. Everything from free, which it's not really free because there's a lot of time getting it set up and integrated, to, hey, you got money, to, hey, we got a lot of money, and man, this thing's going to sing and dance and do awesome stuff.
No, it just sucks.
It sucks for you because what you have to manage is huge. It's an ungodly amount of information, but
There's a double dollar mark MSSP socket.
oh yeah, I didn't remove. It depends on which MSSP you're using. We know them. We know some of them that are just a godly amount of money, and some of them probably, I don't know. You get what you pay for. Next. So yeah, test your security configurations. Don't just like, hey, we've got a log.
You got the same end result, though.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens sometimes when you test. It knocks over your server. that's a sign that that's not okay. Next.
Must have been a scan.
Yeah, several vulnerability scans cause servers to knock over. That's a sign you have a problem. So test your TLS configuration, not just HTTPS. So there's an online one that works for HTTPS, typical stuff, Cell Labs. If you feel squeamish about having that, because that stuff goes public, like anyone can see that you scanned your site and what score and what's the problems on it, you can use command line OpenSSL. There are a lot of other things that kind of borrow heavily from this that make it pretty and nice colors. Oh, big scary red things. I should take a look at them. But a lot of the stuff is basically the simple where you just point at it and it runs it and it tells you where are your problems in your TLS configuration. Next. And then vulnerability web scanning. So OWASP Zap, Burp Suite, OpenVAS. If you have no money, it's better than nothing. But again, if you don't know how to use these tools, sometimes it gives you a lot of false sense of security. You should probably hire somebody to do it. I wouldn't say get a pen test, but get a vulnerability assessment. Because if you don't have an assessment, you're not ready for a pen test, you're going to get your servers knocked offline and it's going to be a bad day. So that link, there's a bunch of vulnerability scanning tools. To some degree, they do tell you what they do, and I would say try to look up online how to use them, but don't rely on them for corporate security. Next. Server-side request forgery. So this is 10. And this one, next. I don't know how this is a problem. I don't know why this still exists. I don't know why anyone deals why this is a problem, but apparently it's a big deal. Next. Basically, it's comes down to your server or API accepts blank URL, whatever URL someone hands you. You don't analyze it or anything. You just blindly take it for what it is and go, okay, I'll process this and I'll do something with it. So that could be a problem where, hey, I'm going to pull down some malicious code and use it to, I'm now a relay of an attack. Or now someone can actually bypass my entire firewall and start accessing either the local host on the secure server in itself, where there are some management sites. There, I know several things that they're only locked down to local host, or it's listening to everything and it implicitly trusts local host. Or hey, now I can get into the internal servers. Or yeah, I can access files on the server. Again, I don't know why anyone doesn't get the heebie-jeebies if we're going to just process a URL. Like that, there's a lot of power behind that. Next. So prevention and detection. Next. Do you really need this? Is this the thing you really need? I'm having a hard time understanding unless you're some big cloud provider that this is a thing. And if you're a cloud provider, you're already probably locked down. I'll put an allow list of URLs, or just don't allow the user to put in anything willy-nilly. Make a small selection of URLs that they need, and if they need another one added, I don't know, call me up, send me an email, I'll add another one onto the site. Just it shouldn't. It's don't trust the users, man. They're always expect them to be malicious. Yeah, they really shouldn't be processed as parameters. I don't know why anyone accepts URL. That one just kind of blows my mind. That's a thing on the top 10. It scares the hell out of me. This is a problem. So next. So we made it. We got through all of them. Like I said, it's not fully encompassing. If you go to the website link I showed on my page, I'll show it. Next. Well, I'll have links on these things if you want to take a picture or I don't know what have you. Go to them. I strongly suggest you go to them. This is, like I said, tip of the iceberg. Just get your toes wet on this. So questions or comments or want to throw something at me? Nice attempt. No questions? Yeah, you guys are all pretty experienced. Most of you were in my last talk. Next. Oh, yeah, here's the links. Go to the top 10. Like I said, there's lots of links as you go through each one of them about how to remediate or how to find them. I didn't show really nearly enough on this. I just don't have enough time to start digging through .NET and PHP and all the other code problems.
I got a question for you.
Sure. From YouTube. Scary.
And I'll put this up here so everyone can see it.
Oh, do you know what you're doing?
I do, I think. What is your favorite?
No, I'm sure they're asking if I know what I'm doing.
What is your favorite
I don't like pretty much it was insecure design. I don't really like that. It just seems overburdened on what it is, and then there seems to be no real great guidance behind it. And if you go to the site, you know, I'm sure I'm gonna get like spit on from other OWASP people, but it's like, oh, this is coming soon for guidance. Like, this is great. I'm so glad. This from 2021. We're now in 2022, and you don't have guidance on this. And for me, it's a mystery. Like, what are we trying to do with this categorization? It seems to be like everything's a problem. Just write better code, people. Just manage your programming and your development process better. Thanks. That's the thing I hate. The one I like best is probably injection. It's a little bittersweet that they brought it down. I still feel like it's a major problem, but I can see as the way things have gotten more and more complicated, we're doing a lot more integration, single sign-on type of stuff, and yeah, a lot more issues with broken access control. I could see that. I'm surprised with cryptographic failures that went up. I thought that was kind of a done process, but I guess a lot of people are now lagging behind. So yeah, that injection is still always going to be my favorite. It's good until it goes off the list. Even then, I'll probably like it best. What?
If I was in the market for an attractive pair of moccasins, could you maybe recommend a brand?
Nope. I don't know what you're talking about, sir. Stop looking at my feet. Don't be weird. Anything else? Any schmarmy comments? You know, how does everyone else feel about this?
I think the software and data integrity failures is going to climb on that list over the next few years. There's a big issue with inventory control as it is as a whole with organizations. Many people in many organizations, big or small, still keep an Excel sheet somewhere with the list of inventory that they have. And some have what they call a functional CMDB. That's really very little automation behind it, updating and retiring assets, and just it's more of an open database where you just dump crap into, never maintain anything, so it's useless. I think when it becomes more application specific, if we can barely maintain a proper CMDB and asset inventory, going a few more levels deeper, getting a little more technical with software dependencies, repo dependencies, vulnerabilities that don't have a CVE, they're just on a GitHub open source project, issue page. There's a lot of things that organizations are blind to, and I think it's become a major problem for us moving forward.
Oh, I thought you said that was going to fall off the list. You mean it's going to go up? Oh, yeah.
It's gonna move up.
I mean, I don't think it's definitely not going off the list anytime. It's a long time problem with people just not knowing what's going on in their own environment.
Are we to infer that cross-site scripting is no longer an issue based on the fact that it dropped off?
No, it got jammed in an injection.
Okay.
It technically is an injection. I mean, yeah, it's there's top 10, man. We're just gonna start consolidating everything into these big things. I mean, at least injection. I don't understand why cross-site scripting was ever separated from it. It was always clearly an injection attack.
Look at the yellow line.
Yeah, it's a dotted yellow line. Yeah, this is a mess. This just so much going on. I feel like it's, just, whoa. I mean, that's exactly my expression in my hair when I saw this, like, wow, some things happened during COVID. I guess we had a lot of free time, and I saw the back and forth inside of OWASP on this one. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of chattering about it. There's a lot of people who are still just like me, like, I am not 100% on this. I don't think a lot of people are 100% on the previous iterations of it. You know, There's a lot of good here. There's a lot of work that's been done. The site, there's a lot of guidance. I'm really impressed with the amount of guidance that they have on the site, just telling people how to go through it. And they make it ingestible and not overly complicated or overly technically jargoned. You know what you need to try to target or how to try to approach these things. Anyone else? Anyone else have any comments on this rat's nest? Do we all love it? We all think it's great? I still don't understand the server-side request forgery. Why is that still a thing? Why is this a thing?
Just to remind you.
I still think, I want to think it's cloud. I think it's just cloud service providers or SaaS providers that are just taking URLs from, oh, point us to your site and we'll act as your proxy. We'll act as this. And they don't lock it down. They just implicitly trust somebody who just signed up for free and on their trial version. And hey, bam, I just took over your service side and your software stack. It's just, man, too much trust. That's it?
There was a major SSRF in 2021. Was it like Nightmare or something like that? Maybe that's why.
Azure Online. It's the agent that was installed.
Yeah, that's a baffling thing of like, why do you trust this? All right, yeah, I think we could shut it down, guys.